is Kristin Nicole Catherine Crowter. I was born in Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. I did not live there very long. We only lived there for about 4 to 5 years before we moved to Salmo, British Columbia, in the southern part of BC. And I have lived there since until I was 20 years old. Salmo is located in the West Kootenays of British Columbia. It's a very small area, lots of small, tight-knit communities, and it is largely Christian, agnostic, and pagan. So I grew up in a household that was Christian in name only, I suppose you could say. Like, we believed in a lot of the Christian teachings because that's all we were taught. But we didn't really attend church. We didn't really have any religious significance to any holidays. It was just sort of, you weren't allowed to say Jesus' name in the house if you were taking it in vain. My mother is a deist. She's a very spiritual woman, but doesn't really subscribe to any one religion. My father is an atheist, but I didn't actually know he was an atheist until I was like 15 or 16 because he kept it very much to himself. My younger sister, I think, is agnostic. She has no real interest in religion as it is at the moment, and never really seemed to. So growing up, it was sort of a spiritual household, but we weren't tied down by any one belief. Largely Christian aspects because that's all my parents were taught growing up, but if we wanted to be anything, there was no reason why we couldn't be. So, like, my parents always told us, like, we'll love you no matter who you are. Keep an open mind and find what's right for you. So, as a kid, the only religion that I really knew about was Christianity because it's all we had in Salmo, was just a bunch of churches. It wasn't until the September 11th attacks when I was in 6th grade that I'd heard of any other religion, and that one looked scary because of how the media portrayed it. So from 6th grade all the way up till 12th grade, I paid Islam no mind. It was that scary Middle Eastern religion that caused the September 11th attacks. That's what everybody thought, and that's how everyone treated it. In 12th grade, I took a comparative civilizations course, and in that course we covered the big 3 religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And Islam was by far my favorite one to study about. It was so interesting. It had beautiful architecture, beautiful artwork. It was exciting for me to learn about something very new that I'd never really learned about before, and it came to be less frightening and more interesting and historically significant and beautiful. In my first year of college as well, I did another Western civilization course when we did the big 3 religions, and we watched a documentary that was on the golden age of Islam, or at least the Islamic countries. And that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, because up to that point I was designated atheist. And seeing all of the historical contributions Islam made, all the philosophical, literary, scientific, architectural, like, most atheists will sit there and say that Islam has contributed nothing to anything. It's a barbaric old religion. And when in reality, like, we get so many mathematical systems from Muslim scholars. Much of what I study, ancient Greek history and literature, was rescued by Muslim scholars. They translated the old texts instead of burning them like Christians were doing. So I gained a whole new respect for the religion. I did 1 year at a local college to sort of get all my prerequisites finished, and kind of figure out what I wanted to do, but I had an idea that I wanted to do history, because that's my all-time favorite thing in the world. I love history. So I did 1 year at a local college, and then I transferred just after that to UBC. So I guess it was the summer of 2011, yes, that I transferred out here. And it's quite sad. That summer was also the summer my father suffered a very terrible brain hemorrhage. And it was very hard for my family that entire summer. My mother was basically never home. She was always with my dad. So it was very hard for me to leave my family in that time, but they're doing well, better. Dad's doing better too. Maybe a little frustrated because he can't do as much as he used to, but yeah, it was really hard leaving, but it needed to be done. I needed to go to school. I needed to go finish my education. So I went to UBC and I enrolled in classical studies as my major and general history as my minor. And I was actually going to do a religious studies minor originally, so I took a bunch of religion courses that year. I did Asian religion, I did Near Eastern biblical mythology, and I did scriptures of the Near East. And scriptures of the Near East and Asian religion actually had two components on Islam, obviously for the scriptures of the Near East. For the Asian religion, my professor said there was no part of the textbook for Islam, but because of its contributions in Pakistan and northern India and whatnot, that he really wanted to do it. So what we did is we went through a bunch of passages in the Quran, mostly fiqh related, that he really liked. Things like rights of women, rights of orphans, financial stuff. He just got so excited talking about it because of how ahead of its time it was. In Scriptures of the Near East, it was much more focused on like philosophy and spirituality. We covered a lot of stuff like on the Day of Judgment, and that's actually what I wrote my paper on, was comparing and contrasting Day of Judgment between Jewish texts and Islamic texts, and it was very interesting, but we didn't spend that much time on it because my professor wasn't so familiar with it. But like that was sort of where it was solidified that it was like my favorite religion to learn about. Up until that point, though, everything that we learned about Islam was always Sunni point of view, the majority. Like you'd learn about everything, like the pillars of faith and the history and whatnot, but everything you learned was always the Sunni point of view. And then at the very end of the chapter, you'd be like, oh, and then there's the Shias and the Sufis. They exist too, and this is what they believe in, but it's always like a short little paragraph. At the time, it was purely knowledge-based. From what I learned, and what I saw on television as well, and at the time still atheist, so I was still kind of like, oh, Islam, not really interested in that, it's too strict. I kind of backed off and was like, well, they can believe what they want to believe, but it's just not for me. I'm very Buddhist-y, Confucius kind of person, very heavily spiritual in that sense. But like what I'm learning about here is just too intense for me. It was not until just this last September, so September of 2012, that I was going to help work at the Freethinkers booth at UBC, and I had a terrible, terrible cold. And I was walking out into the area where our booth would be for club stays, and I walked past the Thaqalain Muslim Association. And we'd only had one Muslim Students Association before that I'd known about. It was the Muslim Students Association, the MSA. And so I kind of got like, there's another one. I need to go see this. And I went over, and they felt really bad for me because I was quite visibly ill. And they gave me tea and were asking if I needed anything and if I'd be okay. And I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Thank you. It's all right. They were so sweet. Like, I've spoken to the MSA before, and most of the time they didn't seem all that interested in me. They were kind of straight-faced and being like, yeah, I'll answer your questions. Not to say they're all like that. I've met some very lovely people to the MSA, but like a lot of the times that I'd gone to them, they weren't too interested in me. But like everyone at the Thakalay Muslim Association was like so sweet and so nice. So in that instance, like I was like, wow, they're so lovely. And so I went on their Facebook group and added myself, and I met Jennifer Jamie McCracken through that. And she only contacted me because we have a mutual friend. She's like, oh, do you know this person? I'm like, yeah, I know this person. She's great. So we started talking on Facebook a lot, just about random things. It didn't matter what. And we got along really well. And it was sort of a gap where we didn't really speak too much until November. And in November, I was leaving the Student Union building, and out front was the Thakalay Muslim Association again, and they were doing Ashura awareness. And so I went over to them and just started asking questions. I didn't even intend to ask questions originally. I was just going to steal like some of the literature they had on the table, but me and the sister there just hit it off, and I just asked like 10 million questions, and man, she was so incredibly patient with me. And the very last thing I asked, I said, I've never been to a mosque. I want to go to a mosque. Do you guys have one that I can go to? And she's like, oh yeah, sure, we're going like this Sunday. I think it was Sunday, I can't remember now. And she's like, well, I'll get it all set up for you and you can come with us. I was like, great. I'd always kind of wanted to go. Even when I talked to the MSA sisters, I'd always kind of, like, a little part of me wanted to go, but at the same time I didn't want to be like, oh, can I go to a mosque, and then have them want to convert me and just be like all over that. So I always had that little kind of fear. But like at the same time I was like, I've never been to one. There are none where I'm from. There are no Muslims where I'm from, so let's go see a mosque. I mean, no pressure. Even if they try to pressure me, there's still no pressure. Let's just go see. And Jamie contacted me on Facebook and said, are you sure you want to come? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, we're going to be commemorating Ashura. She's like, do you know what that is? I was like, vaguely, from what I learned at the booth. And she's like, okay, I'm going to send you a video. Watch the video, it'll give you the history. And she's like, let's meet tomorrow so that I can tell you what to expect. Because if you just walk in to an Ashura celebration, I don't know, celebration is probably not the best word, you'll probably be very confused. So we met, and she ran me through it and asked if it scared me at all, and I was like, no. Let's see this. This will be interesting. And I went, and we went to Azhara in Richmond, and it was so beautiful. Like the mosque was so beautiful. Like the inside was gorgeous. It had beautiful like painted windows, and I think it's called a minaret or the dome. Had all the names of Allah on the inside, and it was just so beautiful. I was just so taken aback when I went in. It was just so heartwarming and lovely, and I didn't feel like I normally feel in churches. When I go to a church, I always get kind of uncomfortable. I went in and I just instantly felt at peace. It just felt so lovely. And so I went off to the side with our mutual friend who is not a Muslim, so that they could do their prayers. And we had a little prayer book so that we would know what they were saying. And I sat there and I watched it, and as soon as they started their prayer, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Like, I've never seen anything so beautiful. I've seen clips of Muslims praying, but to actually witness the prayer all the way through and to hear all of the recitation, it was just so beautiful. And even after, when they were doing all of the stuff at Ashura, when they take out the hand of Abbas and they're beating their chests and they're telling the story of Ashura, like, I cried. I had to go up and touch the hand. I had such a great time being there that all I wanted to do was keep going back. And I did. I kept going back with Jamie every time they had a reason to go. She'd always call. She's like, do you want to go to the masjid? I'm like, yes. Yes, I do. Eventually, I asked her if she would teach me to pray. I'm like, is it okay to teach a non-Muslim to do the prayer? And she's like, oh yeah, sure, it's fine. I'll teach you how we do it. Just come over, give you a good lesson. And at first I didn't do any recitation. I just learned the motions, and she would do recitation. And eventually we just kept adding more stuff in, and I would always go to her house to do it. I found it very meditative. I'd already practiced some meditation, like Zen Buddhist meditation, and I felt it was kind of like that, except with a recitation added. So doing it felt really good, just to like shut everything down for a few minutes and just to do it. So I was always really excited when she'd invite me over and we got to do it together. But eventually I got tired of always having to wait to go to her house. So I went online and I looked up how to do it myself and made a little guide and just did it at home. And believe me, the first time I did recitation, it came out all garbly. It sounded awful. But I was so proud of myself doing it all by myself. I just was so excited. Well, Jamie and I kept meeting, and it turned into sort of lessons, where I'd come over and she would give me like history lessons, fiqh lessons. Sometimes I would come asking questions between Sunni and Shia because I knew a lot of Sunnis. And at first I didn't even know the Shia were that much different. I was just like, slight political difference with different name. And so every so often I'd come back and be like, the Sunnis do this, how come you guys don't do that? And get like the information from it and be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I don't know exactly what point where I just kind of stopped and said to myself, this is me. I want to be this. I knew I loved doing it. I loved doing all of it. I even loved putting the headscarf on. I would do it every so often. I even had Jamie show me. I'm like, how do you guys do that? How do you make it stay? It was just one morning I got up for Fajr to just like prove that I could do it. And I did the prayer. And I was sitting there thinking like, you know, you've changed the way you dress already to be more modest because you feel more comfortable that way. You've already changed your diet because it makes you feel more comfortable. You're doing the prayers because it's a more regular form of meditation for you and it makes you feel better. Like at what point, Kristin, are you going to just like say your Shahada? You're basically Muslim as it is. Like, when are you going to just go that one extra step and make it public? So I contacted Jamie and I told her, I want to say it in the masjid. I want to go say my Shahada. And she got really excited and was like, really? Really? So she contacted Sheikh Bachu and asked him when the best time would be to do that. And that coming Thursday, there was I think it was the birthday of an imam. I can't remember exactly. Yes, it was a birthday. It was the birthday of the 11th imam, I think. And he said, do it that day. We'll do it after, like, Dua Kumail and all the other duas they do. I'm sorry, I'm just totally forgetting things right now. So we did, and I was terrified going off in front of everyone. And I was asked beforehand, do you want to do the normal Shahada where it's just like La ilaha illallah Muhammadin Rasulullah and basically that's it? Or do you want to add Ali? Are you Shia? Is that the one you want to be? And I said, put Ali in there. I am Shia. I've been Shia the whole time. Yes, definitely. So I did the full Shahada, and I was overwhelmed with love and lots of people crying and very excited, and I could barely sleep that night. I was so excited. So that must have been at the end of February. And I always say February 26th, but I think it was a little bit later than that. Yeah, it was just so exciting and wonderful, and just from then on, still just, yeah, practicing to the best of my ability, always learning new things. I have dozens of books. I've collected like so many books, and I love reading them all, and every day is just more exciting because there's always something new to learn, and the community has been absolutely fantastic. I have so many friends. Like, in high school, I never had that many friends. I was always kind of a loner and on my own, that kind of weird kid that everybody teased. And even when I first moved out here, I really didn't have that many friends. But I feel so blessed that when I found this community, I found a place to belong. I finally found, like, my family that wasn't, like, my blood family, that so many people love and care for me. It feels so good. Well, I have lots of books which I do read. I also sit with Jamie every couple of weeks or once a week, depending on when we both have time. And she will always take me through a lot of it because she has been Muslim for 10 years, yes. And she has read like billions of books, watched billions of lectures. So she'll always sit me down and just ask me, what do you want to learn about today? And that's what we're going to learn about. I also watch lectures online. My mother, father, and sister were here in March, and I wore the scarf the whole time, and in fact got lots of compliments from my mom. My grandmother knows as well. She lives in Park Coquitlam. I think the rest of the family knows, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to see them this weekend. They took it just fine. As I said, I grew up in a house where it didn't matter what you believed in as long as you were safe and you were happy and it fulfilled everything for you that you needed it to fulfill. So my dad was a little bit weirded out because like he doesn't know anything about it, but he got very excited when I offered to give him books because he and I are very similar. We're very book people, and I think in a lot of ways my father is the reason that I love to learn, because he has his own little library outside and he's always taught me like life is about learning, so go learn. There's so much out there for you to learn. There's so many things for you to read, so many things for you to watch, and always look at it with an open mind, even if you find it completely ridiculous, because you might still learn something from it. So even if he was a little squicky about it at first, like he's perfectly fine with it. He's very happy for me, and he's very happy to be getting books. My sister probably couldn't care less because she is 17 and is probably more interested in boys than religion, but she still loves me for who I am, and I love her for who she is, and we kind of tease each other back and forth for our very different personalities. For the most part, we agree to disagree. My father and I have always kind of butted heads. We get along for the most part, but we always sort of butted heads. He tended to be a little bit more conservative than I am. So certain things will always come up where we'll be like, no, you're wrong. He's asked some very peculiar questions in the past. Like he once asked me if, how did he ask it? If I was property, that idea that women are property in Islam, if I still had equal rights as a Muslim. And I was like, yeah. I don't know where you're getting your information from, but okay. But like I said, I try to send him as much information as possible, and I answer all of his questions when he has them. I think, like I said, I think in some ways he's still very weirded out by it. He doesn't totally understand it. but he's happy that I'm happy. So we agree to disagree on lots of things. Sitting and listening to the lecture of Imam Hussein's martyrdom, like, it just made me cry. I just sat there thinking this person was so beautiful. And just that very moment when I went up and touched the hand of Abbas, like, I was so overcome with emotion. I think in that moment, that was when I just deep down, maybe not initially knew, but deep down knew that this was me. I was Muslim. And then that's why I just kept coming back. I couldn't stop coming back. I had to keep going to the masjid. I had to keep going to Jamie's house and getting lessons and lectures. And I think for a long time I was in denial because I was atheist for so long, and quite strictly so, very much like anti-religion for a long time, that I couldn't quite say to myself, like, oh, you want to be a Muslim, it's okay, do it. And for a couple of months it was definitely me being like, no, I'm not a Muslim, I'm just doing it because it's interesting and it's all scholarly, purely. And then it was definitely in that Fajr morning where I had basically become Muslim but was still in denial, and I was sitting there thinking, like, it's okay, you can be a Muslim, there's nothing wrong with it. You've always believed in God deep down, you just wanted to hide from it because of bad things that had happened to you. And it's okay, God has never abandoned you, even though it felt like it for so long. He's here now to take care of you, and that's why he's shown you this. So go tell everyone this is me. I am a Muslim, and I am a Shia Muslim because I love my imams and I love the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them. They're definitely trying to be more visible, particularly the Thaqalain Muslim Association on campus. The reason they were created was because the MSA was not providing anything for them. They weren't providing any assistance for their celebrations or commemorations. They basically ignored their existence. So they created their own group to provide somewhere for Shia Muslims on campus. And then even Asara in Richmond, they do quite a lot to reach out to the community to just show them that they exist, they're there. Like, there was Doors Open Richmond, they had a Welcome to Islam type thing back in February, I believe. And that was where people could come into the whole masjid. They had tours, they had booths set up where you could learn about different things, like you could learn about hijab, you could learn about the prayers, you could learn about the 12 imams. It was all there for the general public to come in, and of course they fed us. They have those quite frequently. And Asara, I believe, also has a school upstairs, and they'll take anybody, even they have a Christian teacher, I believe, who works up there, and he's always coming in and listening to the khutbahs for his students. So they're trying very hard to make themselves more visible. It's quite unfortunate, though, that the larger Sunni majority are more visible in the Vancouver area. You'd almost not know there was a Shia community, no matter how hard they're trying to make themselves visible. I think the Sunnis are just more cemented here already. They have speakers coming in all the time. They've got major lectures, conferences. There's Islam Awareness Week on campus, which is put on by the MSA, and that's much bigger than what the Thaqalain Muslim Students Association does. So they're doing their best, but there's probably still a long way to go before the Shia of the Vancouver area are more visible to not only the non-Muslim community, but to the Muslim community. It's really funny. There's a Sunni masjid right beside the Shia masjid. It's the Richmond Jamia Mosque. It's just behind it, and they don't actually know that the other one is there. You can ask the Sunnis over there and be like, oh, Asara's over there, and they're like, what's that? And then you go to Asara and sometimes you ask them like, oh, the Sunnis are back there. And they're like, really? They have no idea that they're located so close to each other sometimes. It's hilarious. In a lot of ways, yes, because like I'm Caucasian and I've had lots of people go up to me and be like, you're a Muslim? But you're white. It's very peculiar because a lot of people believe that to be Muslim is to be Arab or Persian or Pakistani, dark-skinned.
Yeah.
So the idea that you could be Caucasian and Muslim and that you chose to be that and that you chose to wear the hijab is just completely off the playing field for them. Like, they just have no idea. So I feel like there is a bit more of a burden on me to not only present Islam in the best way possible, but to enlighten people as to what Islam really is, and that it is a religion for everyone, no matter where you're from or what ethnicity you are, no matter what gender you were born. It's literally for every person on the planet. And for the most part, I get some silly questions. I even have some people who ask if I'm from Iran. And I'm like, no, I'm Scottish. My family's originally from Scotland and not anywhere near the Middle East. But for the most part, everyone's been nice about it. I haven't gotten any really nasty comments, and most people are very receptive. There's one hadith that is attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and it's a man who goes to him and asks, who is the best person to keep company with? And he said, your mother. And so he asks again, who is next? Your mother. And who's next? Your mother. And after that, your father. And that one always really sits with me because I love my mom. I love her with all my heart. She's been one of the greatest supports in my entire life. She's an angel. She really is. She is the most patient, loving, kind, intelligent, wise woman you'll ever meet. And I think in a lot of ways that just the way she raised me is what I was a Muslim before I was Muslim because of the way she raised me. She's just the most amazing woman. And to hear that hadith and how much honor is given to mothers, like, it rings true because my mother was so amazing.